Our topic for today is study skills. Whatever a student wants to memorize so that can use the information whenever required, maybe in examination, interview or at any place. Why it is so that some individuals forget and some are able in retention and use that information, because every student wants that whatever he or she studies, it should be memorized when one individual requires it. So, we will discuss what is the reason behind this, that some of the individuals are very easily able to recognize or recall the content which has been learnt, and some are not able in retention and they forget the content or the material or any information when it is required. It is all due to the study skills one had applied. So, it makes clear that it is essential for all, especially the students, to know what are the study skills and how to use it, because when any student or any individual is not able to recall the information when it is required, it is really embarrassing for any individual. So, here today in this discussion we will discuss what are the study skills and how these can help the students, and what a student can do individually to enhance the study skills and how to use it. Study skills are discrete techniques that can be learnt and applied to all or most fields of study. These are approaches applied to learning and generally critical for success in school or college or in any area, because I will discuss with you what is the reason behind it, that some of the students, some of the individual are able to recall the information which has been studied by that individual, and why the other individual at the same time is not able. It means definitely the reason behind it, the approaches or the skill which has been applied by the individual. These study skills, they are considered essential for acquiring good grades. Definitely any student would like to have good grades in the examination, and that all is possible when the student is able to recall all the information and can pen down each and every information which has been studied by that individual. And because every student wants to secure good grades, and these study skills, they are useful for learning throughout one's life, not for the students only. Throughout our entire life, we will be needing the information which we have learned, because whatever we have learned in the schools or in the colleges, we have to apply that information in our day-to-day life. That is what we mean by transfer of learning. That is essential. So, the study skills are an array of skills that tackle the process of organizing and taking in new information. When one is trying to take in the new information, one has to apply the intelligence, one has to apply the wisdom in taking that information, and in that process one has to organize that information systematically. So, in this study skill, one will come to know how to take that information intelligently and with full concentration, and how to organize that information, and how one can retain it, and also dealing with assessment. They include mnemonics, which assist in the retention of the list of information. One goes on adding and adding the information, because daily one come across new information, new knowledge, so that keep on accumulating in our memory. So, how one can make it or enhance the retention? So, study skills, they help in the effective reading. All of us read, but we have to read effectively with full concentration, and these study skills, they help in the concentration techniques and efficient note taking. Whenever I am addressing with my students or being a teacher educator, when I teach with the or discuss with the or deal with the going to be teachers, they have one complaint that we are not able to make full concentration. So these study skills, they help us in enhancing our concentration techniques and how we can keep all our senses on one aspect, and whole task is accomplished very efficiently, and how one individual, how one student can make or take the notes very efficiently. This is what one student has to learn. It is essential for each and every student. So it can be said that study skills boost the individual's ability to study. First, say one has to individually boost up his or her own ability or the passion towards a work. So when one applies the study skills or the study strategies in a required manner, then one can boost up oneself and get good grade. Just now I was discussing with you that every student wants to secure good grades, and that will be possible when that individual, when that student is able to recall all the information and pen down all the information in the paper, and that will be possible when one has applied the appropriate or required study skills or the study strategies. How one can manage the time, it is also very important. We come across so many people in day-to-day life that I want to do this task, but I am lacking the time, and most of the time when students come out of the examination hall, they say that I knew much more information, but I could not complete my paper because time was lacking. So I wonder as that student, because there is a famous proverb, he who knows not how to limit himself knows nothing, means one doesn't know how to manage the time. So my dear friends, when one is able to know or one is able to apply the study skills and the study strategies appropriately, one can manage the time very efficiently. And moreover, when one knows about the study skills, about the study strategies, there is one more benefit, that is one can motivate oneself also, and that also come under the study skills. Sometimes it is presumed that it is the duty of the teachers or the duty of the parents to enhance one's skills and to motivate, but it is a proved fact, that it is an established fact that if one is not making effort, one cannot motivate oneself towards that task. So one has to develop a passion, one has to inculcate interest of himself or herself towards that task, and study skills help the individual in doing so. So we can very well say that study skills help the learner to study more effectively, meaning why that is the basic goal, basic aim of our entire education system. We try that our students, our learner, our children, they must learn how to read effectively. So when our students come to know what are the study skills and how to apply those study skills, then they will be able to read effectively, and it will help them in making retention or enhancing the memory. These enable him or her to gain knowledge of the subject matter and learn other subjects independently. So it boosts up the individual's passion and the capability. So if we talk about linguistic skills, in this lecture only we come to know that linguistic skills help learners to communicate, whereas on the other hand study skills enable learners to study. So we have to be very clear about these two skills, whereas linguistic skills help an individual how to communicate effectively. On the other hand, study skills help the individual how to study. This process involves 4 operations. We have discussed a lot in our earlier series about the linguistic skill, but when we talk about study skills, it involves 4 operations. Let us see what are those. First is the perception, then second is the comprehensions, then retention, then retrieval. How the learning process goes on in our mind, because just now I was speaking to you that when we try to focus on something, we try to take the information, and after taking in the information in our mind, the process of organizing that content is going on, so that when it is required, the retrieval process can be very well done. So, in the first process, what we do, that is the perception. We try to perceive the information, and after the perception, what happens, we try to comprehend, we try to understand the things, and after understanding what goes on, one try to keep it memorized, or that is what we mean by retention, so that one is able to for the retrieval exercises, meaning by when one is required to express the information, that is possible. So, we can say very well that under study skills, 4 aspects can be covered. First is the perception, second is the comprehension, third is the retention, and fourth is the retrieval. So, when we talk about study skills, it is required that the teacher selects the material as per his or her utility. We have to keep in mind always what is our target group and what is our task in hand. So, it depends on the teacher that he or she helps the students to select the material, because according to the material, again the study skills or the study strategies will be selected. One cannot read each and every word in the book. So, one has to select the material for what purpose we are trying to get the information. So, keeping in mind the purpose, one can select the material in a book what we have to select, and after selection one has to understand. First, we try to select in a particular text for particular task what are the informations I will be needing. So, that is what we mean by that selection, and after selection how the process goes on, one tries to understand and one tries to focus on the understanding. Now, everything which is understood is not in memory. Some may forget and some can be retention. For retention, one has to make specific efforts. Some of the time students put the question, why do I forget? And I simply reply, because when the tasks were being accomplished, you were not attentive. So, we have to be ready. The last stage involves retrieval of what has been learned when required. The types of study skills. What are the types? First is the gathering skill, that is perception or comprehension, and the second is the storing skill, that is what we mean by retention, and the third is the retrieval skill, when we try to express. In the beginning, we will discuss what do we mean by gathering skills. These are also known as reference skills. We try to understand what do we mean by gathering skills, meaning by how we perceive the information that enable a learner to gather information. One tries to gather the information from various sources as quickly as possible, and this requires 2 sub skills. When one tries to gather the information, to collect the information for any task, this requires 2 types of skills. First is the locating of information. we try to locate from where, from which sources I can gather the required or the concerned information. And after this first skill, that is the locating the skills, locating the information, in the second skill what we do, after locating we try to comprehend, we try to understand. So, in gathering skill, two sub skills are involved, first locating information, then comprehending information. And for this knowledge of sources available, from where we can gather information, they can be books, they can be journals, etc. So, it is a must, and after identification of sources, the learner should make effective use of them. In gathering information, we have come to know that any individual, any student can gather the information from various books, various sources, journals, internet, and so many sources. But one has to learn how to make effective use of them. We have gathered information, it's fine, but we have to see how to apply that information very effectively. A major source of information is dictionary. A student must know how to consult catalog, content page and index at the end of the book. After locating the relevant pages, the student must learn how to skim through them and perhaps scan only these sections which are useful for his or her assignment. One skim the information and then try to scan the information, which information is must for me, which I should keep in my mind, because each and every word what once go through a book or any source of information is not necessarily in the mind. Most students today do not want to go through these laborious processes, with the result that xeroxed materials pile up and nothing gets assimilated. Earlier, when these Xerox machines were not there, the students, rather we used to write many pages with our hand, but these days students run to the shop for the Xerox copies, and without understanding what is the result, the Xerox materials pile up and they do not understand, because they shirk work, they do not develop the habit of writing. So, the gathering skills may be summed up as follows. First, locating information. How do we locate information? Through reference to dictionaries, library catalog, table of contents and index. So many other various sources are there. So, we can locate the information from the dictionaries, from the catalog and from contents and index. And we were discussing that after locating information, what goes on? One tries to comprehend the information, because if one only locate the information, gathers the information and doesn't try to understand, then our purpose will not be fulfilled. So, after locating, what one does, one try to comprehend the information through mastering the sub skills of reading like skimming and scanning. One tries to understand how to read the information quickly, and where one want to know the gist of the content, will try to know, try to read each and every word. After the gathering skill, there comes the second skill, that is the storage skill. Storage skill means we should keep in mind, we should try to remember whenever that information is required. It means what is learnt should be retained. One may ask questions. When something is understood, is it automatically stored in the memory? The answer is partly yes and partly no, because most of the time students have queries. Sometimes they keep that query in their mind, and sometimes they put question to ask whether if I am reading effectively, is it necessary that all the information will be understood or will be retained in my mind, or I may forget. So, the answer is partly yes and partly no. We will discuss about the concentration technique. So, why do one forget? Because when the task was being accomplished, the person was not so much attentive. His or her subconscious mind was involved in so many tasks. So, we teach our students, we suggest our students that we have to try to keep other problems aside, and we have to make use of all the senses on one aspect, and simply the funda is play while you play and learn while you learn. Most students are in habit of copying down every word spoken or dictated by the teacher, and they do not try to understand. So, some of the time if I teach students try to note down each and every word, I say you are a student and you have not taken admission in the stenographer course. So, but when before the examination that information is required to be retrieved, students may forget it. When a students after working so hard forget some information, forget some answers in the examination hall, one feels bad. So, what are the strategies that the students can be able to recall that information and may not forget? This depends on our comprehension skills. How do we are able to store that information in our mind and can use that information when it is required? They should have brief and precise notes ready for quick reference. So, when the teacher is speaking or they are listening any lecture on television or any digital equipment, they should be ready for the precise notes, meaning by they should note down the main points and the sub points, so that whenever they require, they can revise, they can recall that during that lecture these were the points which are important, which can be useful for me for further. In fact, each student adopt his or her own way of storing information. We have individual differences. So, each and every student has his or her way of storing the information, but one has to use the appropriate strategies. However, she or he will benefit greatly from a training in storing skills. Of course, there are the individual differences and everyone has his own style, but if we find that that style is having some error, we as a teacher has to correct that student. For example, when we were discussing the writing skills or the reading skills, so we discussed that while reading there should not be lip movement because it slows down our effort. So, when we find, of course, students have their own style. If we find that style is not appropriate, then in that case they require a training in storing skills. Types of storing skills. Here we will discuss two things. First is the note taking. It involves listening to lectures and taking down the notes. I was speaking just now to you that when we are listening to some lecture, students should be ready with their paper and pen so that they can note down the important points, because it will help them later on that what were the main points, because when we are listening we feel that each and every word is understood by me. So, what is the use of noting down? But at that time, at that moment, one feels that I will be able to remember whole of the content, but it is not so. Later on something may forget. So, one should note down the main and subordinate points. This is a skill every student need to master. But these days we notice that students are not in the habit of writing. So, from the very beginning we have to inculcate this habit in our students, how to take down the note, because this skill note taking is very important, very helpful for the students, for their storing skills, for their memory, because it will enhance their memory skill. In fact, since students do not master this skill adequately, teachers are forced to resort to dictating notes after we have finished lecturing on a topic. If we find that students are not following this technique, they are not noting down, then what a teacher can do, teacher can ask the students that I am dictating the material and you have to note down just to make it their habit. Then after note taking, there is the another skill in the storing skill, that is the note making. How to make the notes, this is also an important skill. One has to apply appropriate strategy. It is very similar to note taking, except for the fact that note making involves reading books and making notes. Note making is a more leisurely activity. So, when the skills may be divided into following sub skills. First, comprehension of the text or the lecture. Both these skills may be note taking or note making. One has to see that each and every word should be understood. So, comprehension of the text or lecture is must. Then the second sub skill is the identification of the main points. It will help them to make their points or their notes ready to revise. Then distinguishing main factors from subordinate ones. Then they can make the notes in two parts. One is the main points and the another is the subordinate points. Then deciding on the order of priority among the various points. A student should be able to note down what are the points which should be kept on the priority among the various points. A teacher can help the students to note down what are the points which are on the priority, because the main points should be revised by the teacher while giving them note taking or during the process of note making. So, when in the B.Ed class, when we suggest how to make the lesson plan, in the end before the home task, we keep the column recapitulation. So, a teacher must try to recapitulate or revise the main points. In this way, students will be able to know what are the points which should be kept on the priority. Then after that, identifying the organization of points. When we have seen these are the points which should be kept on priority, then student must learn how to organize those points, because sometimes students can understand the things, but they are not able to organize the things in a required manner. So, this skill must be understood by the students, how to organize the main points they must try to identify. Then after that, organizing the points into a visual display. They can make the visual charts or any film strips or any teaching aids, because the teaching aids may be in visual form or in audio form, they help in the learning of the material, but visual display is of more utility for the students. So, they must learn the importance of the visual teaching aids, because it will help them in learning these two sub skills in note taking and note making. After the gathering skills and the storing skills, then there comes the third skill, that is the retrieval skills. What do we mean by this retrieval skills? You know, after gathering and storing information, students are required to express or summarize their ideas, but in a lucid and coherent manner that is understood by all. Whatever we say, it should be clearly understood by our listeners or our readers. So, it depends on our retrieval skill how much efficiently or clearly we are able to summarize or express the content which we have gathered and which we have stored in mind. So, all these three skills, all these three study skills, gathering, skills, storing skills and retrieval skills, they are interconnected and they help each other. So, one should be able to express the ideas in a lucid and coherent manner, and it should be understood by all. So, it depends on our expression power or how much efficiently we are able to summarize the main points, because in note taking and note making I discussed with you that one should have the capability how to give the priority of to the main points and what are the sub points, so that they will be able in their retrieval skill. The notes prepared by students at an early stage will help them to summarize the topic. When students were listening the lecture and they were note taking or they were making the notes, it will help them in the retrieval skill. The length of the summary depends on their purpose. Sometimes when we ask the students for the précis, it is generally 1/3 of the content. It depends on our target group, their mental level or our grade or whatever task we are performing. So, it depends on our content. Now, I talk about the reference skills. When we were discussing just now the gathering skills, there I discussed with you that one can gather information from various sources. So, these are the reference skills. First, I will discuss with you use of dictionary. All of us know that to look for a meaning, we just check the dictionary, but generally the whole of the utility is not understood or applied by the learners, by our students. So, here we will discuss how to use dictionary, how it is helpful in gathering skills. A dictionary is a reference book that focuses on defining words and phrases including multiple meanings, because when we especially we are talking in context of English language, we are not the native speakers of this language. So, whenever we come across a different or new word, we have to discuss the word, we have to see the word through dictionary, and we can get the multiple meanings and we can decide which meaning of that word can be applied in our context. For clarity of meaning, one turns to dictionary for gathering the relevant information, because there are various sources. If we want the relevant information, we just consult the dictionary. There are various uses, various benefits of dictionary. Friends, let us discuss in brief what are the benefits of dictionary. First, it helps in improving pronunciation, because we are not the native speakers. So, we have to go for the correct model. So, for the RP model, we have to see how to pronounce, and for this our students, our learners must know how to check those pronunciation symbols which are given in the dictionary. So, it helps in improving pronunciation, and it enhances the mental level and vocabulary of students. It is essential that mental level of the learners should be increased to become a good reader, to become a good writer. So, if we want that our students must be good reader, must be good writer, their vocabulary should be enhanced, and the dictionary is of maximum benefit for enhancing the vocabulary, but one has to develop a passion for increasing the vocabulary. Daily we should try that our students add a new word in their knowledge. It inculcates the habit of good learning and self study. When one is able to consult the dictionary, and when one develops this habit of consulting the dictionary or adding one word in one's vocabulary or knowledge, then it will develop the habit of self study. When student develops the habit of self study, it can help them in developing their storing skill or gathering skill or in retrieval skill also, because we discussed just few minutes back that whatever a student reads, whatever a student study, is everything memorable or one forgets? The answer is partly yes and partly no, and there are various reasons behind it. First, we discussed that when one is not able to make full concentration or is not able to apply the appropriate skills or appropriate strategies, one may forget. So, one has to develop the habit of self study. Then there are further benefits of dictionary. Let us discuss more uses. It enables the students to write correct spellings. You know, when reader is reading a content, and if one has committed many spellings in a wrong manner, it will give the poor impression of that writer. So, it should be the habit of the student to write the correct spelling from the very beginning. Later on, what happens, I have noticed some of the students, they write incorrect spellings, and if you ask them, you tell them this is not correct, they just they just reply and do not feel bad. Oh, I am very poor at spelling, so this is not the right answer. So, this habit should be checked from the very beginning, and you know, it enriches different aspects of grammar. We have to adhere to the different or the various rules of the grammar as it has been established by the grammarians. It helps in learning correct stress and intonation. For the time being here, I would discuss with you what do we mean by stress and intonation. You know, intonation is rising and falling tone. If we are to stress on something in a happy tone, we just speak that thing in a rising volume, and if we are not happy, then we will be giving that is a lower intonation, rising and falling intonation. So, through these symbols in dictionary, one can learn where to give the stress in a particular word and where to give intonation in a particular sentence. So, one can learn these are the various benefits of consulting a dictionary. For learning a language, the use of dictionary is really helpful, but using a bilingual dictionary is not recommended, because in that case students develop the habit of translating each and every word in the other language. So, if one is trying to learn the language in comparison of another language, one is not able to pick the flow. The paraphrasing and circumlocution of language 1 and language 2 is not desirable. Language 1, we are the native speakers of Hindi language, that is our L1, and L2, which is our target language. Here our L2 is English language. So, if we are trying to learn English language by translating each and every word, then students will not be able to become a fluent speaker and a fluent writer. So, for that purpose, bilingual dictionary is not recommended. The monolingual dictionary by Longman is recommended for the purpose. Monolingual dictionary is intended to help the learner with not just pronunciation, spelling, meaning, but also with grammar and collocation, because one has to learn how to use the different rules of grammar and how to pronounce a particular word. So, in that case, we see when we discuss the various methods of teaching English language, we discuss the direct method is suggested, because if we teach our students with translation method, then it is afraid that our students will not be able to become good speaker, because in that case the idea in their mind will come in Hindi and then they will translate in English and it will take time. So, it is required that we need teachers who can teach our students with the direct method. So, for that purpose we are forced to say that monolingual dictionary must be recommended, and other relevant information about its appropriateness in certain context is frequency, the speaker's attitude associated with it, because some of the words have double meanings. So, most of the time the attitude or the context of that content also matters. What is the attitude of the speakers associated with that also matters, and bilingual dictionaries are more often applied at the initial stages of learning. At initial stages we can ask our students to consult the bilingual dictionaries, but not later on, because in the later stages we want that our students should be able to study one language without taking the help of another language, because it is afraid if it is not done they will not be able to speak the language with a good flow, to write the language with a good flow. So, monolingual dictionaries written for non-native speakers concentrates on providing information. It teaches how to produce and pronounce a word, because it is essential and it is expected from our teachers as well as from our students. Then one must be able to produce and pronounce the word in a required manner, in an appropriate manner, and for that purpose we have to consult the dictionaries how to pronounce, and we have to learn those symbols. Monolingual dictionaries can be helpful in learning the inflectional form and grammar of the words, but it is deplorable that a dictionary is not fully utilized by learners, though it can increase their vocabulary and detailed knowledge also about words. The use of dictionary just to check the meaning is valid, but there are other uses also which our students are not aware. They feel that dictionary is just to check the meaning only. No, my dear listeners, it has the other benefits also. Every dictionary comes with a section at the beginning telling us how to use it with detailed annotated examples. However, these introductory sections remain to be read. It is almost peremptory for learners to know that an entry for a word is made up of several parts. Different symbols and typefaces indicate key features of the word. For example, its pronunciation and how to spell its various forms, as well as its definitions and grammatical information. Now, after the dictionary, we will discuss how to use a thesaurus, and I believe by the time our listeners must be knowing that dictionary is not meant only to consult the meaning, it has other uses also. One must learn how to consult the dictionary. And when we talk about using a thesaurus, the word thesaurus means a treasure house in Latin. It is indeed a treasure house of words for a writer, but it needs careful handling. Thesaurus is not a substitute of dictionary. Most of the time students are aware about dictionary only and they are not aware about thesaurus. So, they must be clear about it, what do we mean by thesaurus and what is its utility. It is a word finder. Thesaurus is a word finder. It is a handling tool to help recall a word that has slipped out of the mind. It gives us alternative ways of writing when we want to express ourselves more elegantly and effectively. So, we can compare that for finding the meaning of the words and other uses we consult dictionary, but On the other hand, Thesaurus is a word finder and students must be in the habit of consulting the Thesaurus also, but the student who is having the passion for learning, they will be approaching for the Thesaurus in the library. We should remember that a thesaurus does not tell the use of a particular word or expression. For that, we need a dictionary. Roget's thesaurus is the best one, which is not organized in an alphabetical order. Rather, the entries have been organized using a scheme of universal concepts. Suppose, now I am discussing how to consult the thesaurus. Suppose a user is trying to recall a word such as inarticulate. He or she would have to go to the section headed intellect. Then the selection or the subsection means of communicating ideas, thus reaching that group of words. So, I believe you know by the time what is thesaurus, and in the end I will discuss with you encyclopedia. In the words of J.E.S. Hayes, an encyclopedia is a huge set of articles full of information about many subjects. It does not provide much information as much as that of a text would, but gives a good basic overview of each subject. To be precise, an encyclopedia is a type of reference book or compendium holding a comprehensive summary of information from either all branches of knowledge or a particular branch of knowledge. Actually, the word encyclopedia is derived from the Greek word encyclopedia, which means a general knowledge of the word of disciplines, which was published in 1559. The first encyclopedia was written by Pliny the Elder. The work consisted of 37 volumes and covered everything from anthropology and human physiology to agriculture, painting and pharmacology. During the following centuries, encyclopedia adopted as religious overtone. The first Christian encyclopedia was published in 560 AD and the first Muslim encyclopedia came to light soon after, and in 1403 the Yongle Encyclopedia was published in China. It consisted of 11,000 handwritten volumes. Most of the original work has been lost through centuries and less than 400 volumes survive today. Previously, these works were collected in published volumes, and modern publication include digital formats, that is software on a disk or website with information on them. Now, let us discuss what is the difference between dictionary and encyclopedia. A dictionary offers definition of words occasionally accompanied by illustrations to provide the reader with the meaning of individual terms or phrases. An encyclopedia explores topic in greater depth and more than includes illustrations, maps and photographs. While most encyclopedia are organized alphabetically, some are arranged by categories or cross-referenced articles to allow for easier reading. The publishers need to make revision and release new volumes with more information to keep them relevant. The internet has really made the difference when it comes to encyclopedia. The online version are updated on a regular basis. Relying only on the printed version would be like using outdated information. Therefore, online consultation would always be useful. Now, inferences, analysis and extrapolation, these three terms one has to understand when we are discussing with the study skills. Inference, after reading a story, essay or paragraph, when one arrived at conclusion, it is what we mean by inference. But here one has to be careful while making inferences. The central idea should be kept in mind. Then analysis, when the content is long, it is divided into small portions for understanding. The process is called analysis. It can be said that analysis is a detailed study of a subject. Then third and the last is the extrapolation, means forming an opinion or make a judgment about a situation, or we form a different situation. Then the correction or the concept of inference is related to extensive reading, whereas the concept of analysis is related to intensive reading. So, we should be aware of intensive reading and extensive reading for better understanding of inference and analysis. Intensive reading is, it means detailed study of the passage in the type of reading. The reader has to be careful with the different language item, that is words, grammar, language, expression, ideas, etc. She or he tries to understand anything and everything contained in the paragraph. Then after intensive reading, in this reference of inferences and extrapolation, one has to know about the extensive reading. The reader is concerned with overall meaning and note the language. Here, reading pleasure and enjoyment is more important so that one can read fluently. So, generally in the lower classes, books are prescribed for intensive reading, but in the higher classes, extensive reading on the part of the students is as important as intensive reading. In intensive reading, the students cannot ignore the meaning of any word. One has to follow each word or structures contained in the paragraph. But in extensive reading, one can skip over a line in a word or a structure which one feels to follow. So, this way we come to know about the inferences or the extrapolation, and we have discussed intensive reading and extensive reading. So, here I conclude that these study skills are very important to know by the students, because these study skills or the study strategies will help the students to recollect or recall the information when it is required, and they can get good grades in the examination. And not for the students only, it is essential for every individual, because when we gather the information, it is essential and we require and we feel that whenever that information is to be expressed, we should be able to recall that. So, I believe that these study skills which have been discussed in this session will help the listeners or the viewers to enhance their memory and study. That's fine.